Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stober. The world continues to grapple with the refugee problem with the attendant humanitarian crises. Today, our focus is on the humanitarian crisis at the local level with an eye on the bigger picture. Africa, and indeed Nigeria, is not spared of the huge challenges of displaced persons and irregular migration. Now, a regional dialogue bringing together Africa and Europe will be part of our conversation in just a moment. Joining me now is the Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, Tijjani Aliyu Ahmed. Federal Commissioner, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, most welcome. Thank you, sir.
Right. We talk about these issues, the refugee problem, displaced persons, and migratory issues as well. Most of all, in parts of the world, this has become a huge challenge. People moving, even though we prefer to refer to those as irregular migrants, who have created a huge challenge in terms of so many things from one part of the world to another, usually employing very dangerous means in migrating. But let's start from the very beginning. Give us a picture of what the situation is like locally, and we start off with the matter of displaced persons in this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stober. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons is a federal government agency responsible for providing support, care and protection to the refugees, migrants and then the displaced persons. And when you sum the three categories, we refer to them as POCs, persons of concern. This commission, as I've said, is responsible to be able to provide protection and also provide support to these persons of concerns. It is a commission established about 35 years ago, starting as a refugee commission. And later it metamorphosizes to become National Commissions for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons as a result of the increase in the number of displaced persons. And the federal government wanted to have an avenue or a platform in which they can see to the problems of these, both the refugees, the migrants, and the displaced persons. Hence, the commission came into existence. And it was an act of parliament. As of 2022, it becomes an act of parliament. A law establishing the commission as Federal Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. And this commission, as I'm speaking with you today, is managing issues of refugees, going to about 400,000 of them. And these refugees were found cut across the surroundings of some of these African countries and surrounding Nigeria. Particularly in Cameroon, you find not less than about 54,000 Nigerians that are refugees there. If you go to Niger, you have similar number in Niger. And also in Chad. The government has been struggling to ensure that those refugees, particularly those that want to return back to this country, because of course situation will arise, either they became tired and they wanted to return back home, considering the fact that the security situation in Nigeria is improving. But however, we have chunk number of them in Cameroon, in Niger, and in Chad. And when you go to Libya, you have also another significant number of Nigerians that are living there as refugees. We have been receiving invitation calls from Libya informing us that most of those Nigerians that are living there as refugees wanted to return back to the country. In 2021, during the last administration, about 10,000 of these refugees were being returned back to the country. And most of them are found within Borno State, Adamawa, and Yobe State, because they have the greatest number of the refugees that are living outside this country. The causative agent of this refugee situation are found in one, Boko Haram.
Right.
Boko Haram is one of the major causative agents of having our Nigerians becoming refugees outside this country. Two, we have banditry of recent, kidnapping. And then the latest one now is displacement as a result of is this erosion, is this wind,
Flooding, natural disasters.
and so on and so forth. And then also farmers herders clashes. All these are part of the reasons why many of our Nigerians left this country to seek for refugee, and they become refugees in other countries other than Nigeria. You know, displacement is in two folds. A displaced person can remain in Nigeria, living, for instance, Maiduguri to Adamawa, or from Adamawa to Plateau, or from Plateau to Abuja, and so on and so forth. This is an internal displacement, and they are the ones that we refer to as displaced persons. Mm-hmm. Whereas those that are left outside the shore of this country, they become refugees. In this case, they have to get registered, have a refugee number before they are being recognized as refugees. Thank God, during the last administration, the federal government looked into the issues of these refugees that are living outside this country, and for those that have applied to voluntarily return back to the country. Because if you are returning somebody as a refugee back, it has to be voluntarily. You don't force them to come back to Nigeria. And that's what we are now doing. Since 2021, over 10,000 were being returned. Right. And of recent, during in March, April, I think with the collaboration with the Borno State government, we returned around 7,000 from Chad. And today we are working towards repatriating a lot of them, a good number of them, from Cameroon and Niger.
No, that's as far
that is the aspect of
refugees.
Of the refugees. When you talk about the internally displaced persons, you are talking about those people that were displaced from their ancestral homes and stay elsewhere within the cycle of Nigeria. Take, for instance, we have thousands of our internally displaced persons living around Drubi here in Abuja, Wasa here in Abuja, Kabusa, and then the surroundings of Abuja entirely. These ones are displaced persons. And in the number of displaced persons today in Nigeria, you cannot get less than 6.1 million of them that were being displaced. However, the federal government is making a fantastic effort into ensuring that we decamp them, because we cannot continue to allow them to remain in camp because of certain reasons.
Right. Federal Commissioner, you know, about 6.1 million, you say, yeah. But a huge chunk of these would definitely be in the northeast, yeah, where the activities of terrorists have made it virtually impossible for these people to, and they continue to stay in IDP camps. Now, it would seem that of recent, the terrorists have also stepped up their activities. And even for some who had expressed an intent to go back to their lands, they're beginning to think twice. Now, this is spreading, and we're not even talking about bandits across other parts of Nigeria. And so there is a huge issue with internally displaced persons. How are you addressing those?
Thank you very much. You see, when we found out that the number of displaced persons kept on increasing, we have to come up with a device means of ensuring that we no longer keep them in the camp. When you keep a displaced person in the camp, it means chunk of our budgetary allocation will go into that, because where you have about 6.1 million Nigerians and the government to continue catering for them, is practically impossible. What the commission did was to come up with an innovation, because there are those ones of them, no matter what you do, they may not be able to return back to their ancestral homes again. And we cannot continue to keep them in the camp. So we bring in the issue of resettlement cities. The National Commissions for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, before my taking over as Federal Commissioner, my predecessor worked tirelessly to ensure that they provide an alternative to that. And that is the resettlement cities. These cities, we are beginning to construct them across the Nigerian states. As it is today, we have displacement city in Nasarawa State. We have one in Borno State. We have in Katsina State. We have in Kano State. We have in Daura, in Katsina State. And we also we are beginning to construct one in Edo State, but for some certain reasons of land acquisition and so on and so forth, that has been stalled. If not for the scheduling of our program, tomorrow would have been a day, tomorrow Thursday would have been a day where we are going to flag up the relocation of these IDPs to some of these our resettlement cities.
Right. The idea of resettlement cities, how would this now be different from the IDPs, the camps where these people are being held?
Thank you very much.
Right.
In the resettlement cities, we try to provide a skill acquisition center there, where we are training them in various trades. And not only that, take for instance the one in Kefi, which is ready now, and which already we have relocated about 300 of them in Kefi now. We removed them from Abuja here, from Wasa, from Durumi, and we relocated them to Kefi. We have a passage of land for them to cultivate, because you find that most of these displaced individuals were farmers, very good farmers. So we were able to reintegrate them with the community around that area. And we were able to get a parcel of land, about 50 hectares of land, for them to share into this number of households that we have in that resettlement cities. And then they can cultivate and be on their own. You don't need to give them any food again. You don't need to provide them for everything. They will produce, sell parts, and then eat parts. So in this case now, I think the burden of feeding, the burden of what and what on the Nigerian government, I think, is drastically reduced. On Sunday last week, this week Sunday, we were there to provide them with an outreach healthcare in the city there. At least after some times now, we allow them to be on their own through what they were able to produce, either in the farm or through the skill that they have learned in the center, skill acquisition centers. So these are some of the actions that we've taken. We have also built a clinic there, and with collaboration with the state government, they will send staff there into the clinic. After some time we had to collaborate with the state. Part of this responsibility, of course, the state will take over. So these are some of the things that we are going to ensure that we will become these IDPs and then settle them in a well-organized form with statistics and everything at the city which we constructed in the states I have earlier mentioned.
Okay. One thing would like to find out is, do you envisage that these resettlement cities will grow naturally to become townships on their own, which in the long run will satisfy the needs of any of those currently displaced persons of wanting to go back to, as you put it, the ancestral land?
So you see, at one of our major mandate is to reintegrate.
All right.
Reintegrate. And that's why I said, like those ones, for instance, those ones that are living in Kefi, we try to ensure that there is strong and formidable collaboration between the displaced person that we are now they are now being relocated to the city, and then the immediate community.
All right.
Would they have leadership in that displacement cities? Then we try to ensure that we engage the leadership of the displaced city and then those of the immediate communities. That relationship is there. We have a church, we have a mosque, all in the city there. And then the imams from the community where the displaced city is being located, the pastors have been interacting with each other. The heads of the development city and that of the immediate community. That is that good understanding and interrelationship. So in fact, when you go to Kefi, you will see wonders there and you will appreciate what the commission has done in that direction.
All right. We'll continue with this conversation in just a minute. Well, you did say for now you have about 5 of these resettlement cities.
About 6 of them.
6 of them,
yeah.
Right. But you're considering the very huge numbers you're dealing with here. And I'm particularly interested in those in the axis of Borno, and the axis of Benue, for instance.
Yeah.
Are you looking to establishing these in many more numbers? Or how many do you target in the long run?
Yeah, in fact, what we are targeting to have not less than about 15 to 16 of them, because that we have certain states that are more in this kind of situations than others. Not all the 36 states of the Federation. When you talk about Borno, you talk about Yobe, you talk about Katsina, you talk about Niger, you talk about Benue, you talk about Plateau, and then to some large extent, we have a lot of chunks of refugees in Cross River. We have them there too. So our intention is to see that those key areas, those major areas where we have chunks of displacements, we have the resettlement cities there. If you look at the ones I have mentioned, is it Katsina? Is it Zamfara? We have also in Zamfara.
All right.
These resettlement cities.
Let me understand the dynamics of this, for instance. And since we're talking about displaced people, which means people from one part may relocate
to another
part.
That's right.
In fact, not sharing cultural affinities with where they're originally from.
That's right.
Perhaps the main consideration will be how far away the amount of the distance they can put between themselves and whatever it was that has displaced them from that.
You see, when you are talking about integration, you don't talk about tribe, you don't talk about whatever. Just like we are now in Abuja. So there are so many different interest groups living together in harmony.
So it's quite possible that a lot of these people may not necessarily be resettled in these cities that you talk about based on any kind of ethnic or cultural affinity.
No, not at all.
These are neutral groups.
No, not at all. Our job is to ensure that we reintegrate Nigerians.
Right.
Whether displaced or not. We need to reintegrate so that we become one and indivisible country. And that's what we are trying to do. Maybe other organizations may take cue from the National Commissions for Refugees, because we must have to make people understand that we are all Nigerians.
Right.
And once you are a Nigerian, you can live in any part of this country, provided you intend to live there. Because this relocation that we are doing is not by force. It is when you show interest. And one thing you should even want to hear is that not only Nigerians that have been relocated, including some of these refugees, Cameroonians, because the chunk of refugees we have in this country are coming from Cameroon. A lot, if not 60% of our refugees in Nigeria today are from Cameroon. And some of them were living in that resettlement city. And they are living there happily, integrating with other Nigerians and also the surrounding communities. You'll be surprised that when we get there, maybe by June 14, we are hoping that we are going to flag up that proper relocation there in Kefi. And I will invite you so that you go and see it to yourself. You see where a Cameroonian is planting yam there in the sack, and he's training those people that are living around with him there in the resettlement city to learn how to farm yam in the sack. We were there 3 days ago, and I saw it. And already most of the young ones that are living there around the camps are learning how to do painting, blacksmithing, tailoring. All you find it there at our skill acquisition center there. By the time they learn and they become themselves, you don't need to go and give them any envelope, or you go and give them any handout, or whatever. They should be able to feed themselves. And I'm happy when I visited them on Saturday. I saw that some of the refugees and the internally displaced persons that are living there are trading. Because we have built some small mini markets there, shops. And then we have also a barbering salon there in the market. Those people that are living in the villages around the resettlement cities are coming in there to buy some of these things from them. We have, of course, the women folk of them who are coming from Borno or Yobe. You can see them doing this or that type of cap you are wearing.
Right.
And then selling it. Very interesting.
Okay. So now these are two categories. Let's go to the third one, the other one, that has to do with migration. And in this case, I'm looking at irregular migration. How big is this challenge for your commission?
Oh, very big indeed. When you talk about regular migration, you must also look at the irregular migration, which is thriving more than even the regular migration. As I'm speaking with you, Nigerians many of them are out of this country, either through the regular or the irregular means. But I think what we are trying to say and why Nigeria becomes a member of the Rabat process is because they want to see how they can relate with other countries of the world on this issue of movement, this migration, and see where they can come in order to salvage some of these situations. But where you will have many of our Nigerians living outside this country through the irregular means, and then at the same time some of them dying through the Mediterranean Sea and so on and so forth. So then we need to do something. And yes, that's why Nigeria becomes a member of the Rabat process.
And now that's the big question that we've always asked. And sometimes we say, we look at the symptoms, and we might not pay that much attention to the root causes. Because the question is, why would someone decide to? Even as we say, it's anybody's choice to decide where they want to go to live, but just for them to do it in a proper manner. But why would someone decide to embark on irregular trip without following the due process, endanger their lives, and be stuck in somewhere and create problems for both their home countries and for the country? Yeah. So what are those things that are driving people to embark on such dangerous enterprise, if you like.
Okay, you see, when we are talking about migration, we're talking about a movement of people, either within or without. In the Nigerian context, one of the major issues or major issue that creates the movement of people within and outside, one is looking for a greener pasture. Within, for instance, somebody working in the state and decided to say that, look, if I come to Abuja, I will get something better, and they move.
Yes, but that's within the country, where it's
Within
your
the country, and they move.
But when you
But that is
decide,
migration, you understand?
Right.
And that's migration. And then there are some of us again, Nigerians, that may decide to leave Nigeria, also seeking for greener pasture.
but how?
Somebody
without
might have told him that when you go to London as a medical doctor, this is how much you are going to earn, and so on and so forth. This becomes a driving force.
Then there are those without any
And then
kinds of
there are those
qualifications,
without
any kinds of
Yes,
skills,
yes.
and they're also embarking on these
Sometimes
journeys.
it's a result of this banditry.
All right.
People also move out. If you move out when you don't have anything doing here, and you have heard that even if you wash a plate in Qatar, this is how much you will earn. You will see people begin to move, even though that person is not technically or educationally sound. But we will decide to leave because he has to go and earn a living. These are some of the reasons. Sometimes to seek for greener pasture. That is one reason. And then secondly, knowledge sharing. People want to get to understand, to know more. So knowledge acquired too causes people to live where they are in their country and for another country in order to seek for knowledge. That is why we have many of our children now going out for educational tourism.
And yet, in the same vein, there are those who believe that the grass is greener on the other side,
That's
even
right.
when they are not certain about that and they don't know about
And there
that.
are
really.
also individuals within and outside this country who try to deceive our brothers and sisters. Sometimes, particularly those that are going through the irregular means,
Yeah.
it's as a sort of deceit. Somebody will say, okay, since you are unable to get access and have a visa, come, I have another means for you.
Right. Okay.
You understand? Then they will not deceive people. Collect their monies and then start the journey. Along the line, they will be hooked up.
Okay.
And they became problem to both the country of origin and then the country of destination. And that is what we are now facing in Libya.
Okay.
We have been receiving calls every now and then from Nigerians who are stocked up in Libya there, and they are not getting it right. So we are trying to see how we can discuss with the government, because I think what we needed is to have a means of transportation, flights. The IOM has been doing their best,
All right.
assisting Nigeria in terms of bringing back our Nigerians that were stocked elsewhere. And that's why of recent we have a lot of returnees from Sudan, from Libya, from America, from UK. Even last week we received another 100 and something from UK. So this is the situation now.
All right. We'll explore this in greater detail right after these messages.
My better. Thank you.
Right. And this brings us to the question of the Rabat process. What is it meant to address, and how are we part of this Rabat process?
Well, you see, as a result of all these things that we have been explaining about, regular, irregular, and so on and so forth, some countries within both in Africa and Europe decided to come together to dialogue on the issue of migration, and development. So Rabat process refers to dialogue, migration dialogue, and development. How can they look into this issue of migration and come out with something tangible that will help both countries? Because Nigeria is a country of destination and a country of, is a reference country. Mm-hmm. And we became membership of this Rabat process 2022. And we were the first Anglophone country to become member of this Rabat process, and where we also been considered today to lead the process as chair of the Rabat process. The process is mainly to discuss issues surrounding migration and to see what can we bring out of this migration. Is it, how do we discuss so that we can soften some of these conditions that everybody must meet before he gets a visa and travel? Because the visa acquisition is one of the major issues that people run away from and then indulge in irregular migration. And at the end of the day, it becomes a problem to both countries. Okay, what do we do? So now they said, let us collect ourselves, both African and Euro countries. And as I'm talking to you, we have about 57 countries that are membership of this Rabat process, both African and European countries. In addition to that, we have the EU, European Union, the ECOWAS, Economic Committee of West African Countries, the IOM, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. They are all, these ones are part, but as an observatory status, on an observatory status. The EU, the ECOWAS, the IOM, and the rest of them. But the Secretariat of the Rabat process are the ICMPD. Those are the Secretariat. So Nigeria became a member, and not only a member, become member of the steering committee. And it was because it is a member of the steering committee, was able to become the chair of the Rabat process today. And in our meeting that was held in Portugal in January 2025, official handover took place. We took over the leadership of the Rabat process from Portugal, and it is a one-year issue. At the end of 2025, by January 2026, we'll also be handing over to Switzerland. Switzerland will take over from us in January 2026. And the main issue is to discuss this irregular and regular migration and to see of what benefit will it be to our country. If you discuss about the migration and you resolve to say that you can have a bilateral relationship or meeting with another country to say that, okay, between we Nigerians and you, this is how we should handle this. By the time you agree, that is a bilateral agreement. And I think it will solve your own problem. You can only do that only if you are a member of the Rabat process. You can see one of the advantages. Another advantage is that when we agreed, of course, there may be knowledge sharing. Okay, we can agree that, okay, bring a number of your students to come and study in my country. You can have an educational bilateral agreement between Nigeria and any other country. Or you can have on youth innovations, because this is our first thematic meeting. Okay. That is coming off Tuesday next week. So this is some of the advantages that one can drive, and Nigeria can also drive out of it. And that's why the Rabat process is there as a platform for these 57 countries to utilize and make use of it and get something out of it.
Okay. We have more on the people of concern. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One-on-One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm still here with the Federal Commissioner, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons, Tijjani Aliyu Ahmed. We're talking about the Rabat process. And migration issues are profound, and addressing them doesn't come cheap.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the funding of this dialogue. And what are we looking at here?
Well, generally, not only migration. Of course, it's not easy to manage migration, displaced persons, and the refugees. I think the weight that this thing is carrying, I think, is something that one will be surprised. How are you doing in managing these situations? Well, I think we want to first of all appreciate the federal government, because this commission is being funded, as far as I'm concerned, 100% by the Nigerian government, by the federal government of Nigeria. And I think with the situation in which we are now, everybody knows that it's not everything that you want that you will get. But at least I can say that the government is trying. But I think I may wish to say that they need to try more. They have to try more, because the funding, sincerely, is not much there, despite all the effort the federal government is giving, because of the nature and the demands of this mandate. Even if you are left alone with displaced persons in this country, I think you know that that's a very big challenge. The place of managing both the internally displaced persons, refugees, and then the migrants. I want to appeal that we need to be funded the more, so that we will be able to carry out our mandate as is required of us. But I want to appreciate the federal government for all that they have been doing in terms of funding, in terms of assistance, in terms of protection. And let me also use the opportunity to call the captains of industry, because not everything you leave in the hands of government. Certain corporate organizations has to come in. Because if you have a lot of displaced individuals in Nigeria, going beyond what the federal government can take, of course, if you don't assist, you will also be adversely affected. If you are producing, as a producer, when you don't have people that have the money to buy, would it affect you? So therefore, the need for every individual, including captains of industry, has to come into this.
All right.
The government should not be left to take care of these major issues.
Let me take you back to the matter of regional dialogues and regional engagements in addressing the problem of migration. And I want us to look at how, for instance, the ECOWAS protocol impacts on the matter of migration here, with the protocols on free movement of persons and goods, which means within the ECOWAS, people can move freely in.
Yeah.
Now, depending on their needs and what they believe, the kind of life they believe they can access in other parts, it means you can actually have a huge chunk of people moving, and they're permitted to do that. But these can also create a lopsidedness in the numbers that are moving from one place to the other, as to create more problems. So are countries within this bloc discussing, while not, stopping the process, what's been agreed?
No, I think if you have listened to me very carefully, I said membership of this rapid process, countries that are members of this rapid process, they could decide to have a bilateral discussion.
Yes, but now I'm using ECOWAS now, for instance.
Yes, countries within the ECOWAS community, take for instance Nigeria, Ghana, they can still have their own bilateral discussion on certain issues.
Without prejudice to the free movement of persons.
Of the persons. Of course, you will look at your own, what is that, what advantage can you derive out of this movement, if there is any, or where are the disadvantages? And that's why you have to sit down and discuss. If Nigerians coming to Ghana would be advantageous to Ghanaians or to Ghana government, certainly that kind of arrangement could be there.
But if it is seen as some disadvantage?
It can withdraw. Because for every country, member country is an entity of itself. Aside from the laws or whatever that binding them together and form the ECOWAS, still every country is an entity of itself. I don't understand me. It's an entity of itself. So everybody is looking to what advantage can they derive out of it. And that's why when we took over this rapid process, the aim, one of the advantages we will drive out of this is that we'll be able to set the record and then set the ball rolling. We say, okay, as the chair, you will have some influences that you can work towards having it into your own country. So some of these things are there also for you as the chair of the process. You should be able to exert some control, level of control about what to happen and what will not to happen. Where can we now put our hand? What kind of advantage can we derive from this and that as chair of the process?
At one point, while we're exploring the root causes, or part of the root causes of migration,
That's right.
we did say apart from the matter of war, terrorism, natural disasters, and all that, there's also another aspect, which I say is also a part of the root causes, which many countries, particularly in Africa, are still failing to address: the question of good governance. And a number of times we've heard people say it is governance failures that has driven people to be so desperate as to want to embark on journeys without properly considering.
I don't want to agree with that. I don't want to agree with that. Sometimes it is your own initiative. If somebody decided, of course, many people left this country for another country to seek for greener pastures. But yet, many people are still living in this country and living their life. So what is the government issue there? Sometimes it depends on the belief of an individual. If your belief informed you that leave Nigeria, if you go to Ghana, you will get more money, you will leave. You will not ask clearance from Nigeria. The only thing you look for maybe is a visa or whatever. Because Ghana is one of the membership of ECOWAS, maybe you have the free access to move to Ghana. But I am telling you, it depends on the belief of individuals. Okay, look at it now. From 2023, when we have this new government, whether you like it or not, whether you believe in it or not, we are beginning to have some positive changes in this country in terms of even security. So if you are saying that it is as a result of security that you left this country, okay, now I think the security situation in Nigeria now is improving. Why do you want to leave? That's his belief. Whether there is no crisis in this country, people will still want to leave because migration or movement is a natural thing. People must move. So I don't want people to believe that because there is bad governance, that is why some people move out of this country. But even in a situation where you still have a good governance, people still move. You want to tell me that the people that are coming from China in thousands to Nigeria, is there no good governance there in China? Is that why they left China and come to Nigeria? No. I don't want to believe that.
Right. Let's go ahead in just a moment. We'll explore more of this.
Yes.
Well, as an agency of the government, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, you find yourself mostly at the end of it all, picking up the pieces when there's been crisis, either through migration, irregular migration, refugees, people, Nigerians fleeing as a result of conflicts and all that. And you're always the ones who are at the rear, picking up the pieces.
Yeah.
And so one would say, would you consider measures that will now raise awareness of people about how to comport themselves, particularly for those who embark on irregular migration, for other purposes other than insecurity and the like?
Yeah, I think we have been into advocacy. Advocacy, particularly to the youth, because migration is more on the side of the youth than the old ones. And one of the major action that we've taken is to collaborate with the universities. Because this is where you can catch them young. Because most of these people that are living out of this country, seeking for greener pastures, were those that have been certificated. So if we cannot get those ones, at least for those that are coming, we should be able to disseminate information to them to say that when you leave this country through the irregular means, this is what you will face. But where you want to live, you must be able to have information about where you are going. So some of these kind of informations, we are trying to see how we can be disseminating it to the younger ones that are now in the university. And today we have a kind of collaboration between the National State University, KEFI, where we are going to institute a Center of Excellence on Migration in that university. We are also collaborating with the University of Abuja too, the Migration Department of the University of Abuja. We are doing that in order to provide enough and adequate advocacy as it relates to movement, migration of our younger ones living out of this country. But no matter whatever you do, of course, certainly, as I've said earlier, people must move because movement is natural. People must move. But these are some of the areas that we have been trying to see how we can provide enough information to those that are coming to say, okay, this is how we would do it. In terms of visa, we are also trying to relate with other countries who are members of this Rabat process to bring down some of these conditions that are hard enough, that is making our youth to go through the irregular means. Through this Rabat process, we should be able to have a kind of bilateral or regional arrangement with those countries that are members of this Rabat process. So these are some of these areas that we have been trying to make sure that we linked up so that we have a curtail in the level of irregular migration of our youth out of this country.
One last aspect has to deal with refugees who are in Nigeria.
That's right.
In the past, it was a little bit challenging to manage them. But what is the situation now, those refugees who are in?
No, I think there are a lot of changes now.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk about them right after this.
That's right.
Right, so there have been changes.
Yeah, there are some changes now. Because as it is today, we have found a way of ensuring that we book down, we will register our refugees who are living in this country through the effort and support from the UNHCR. Because most of the angles, locations where you have free access of refugees into Nigeria is particularly Lagos, Cross River, and Niger, through Niger access there. So what we do is, when you become a refugee here in Nigeria, before we allow you to become a refugee, you have to register with us. And then we'll treat you just the way we treat Nigerians. We don't have any discrimination. And not only that, we allow them to enroll in our schools. We allow them to enroll, and we, of course, to some large extent, they can have a gainful employment here. Have their family, everybody here around. But they must have to be registered and to be identified as refugees. And that would not stop us for any time they want to leave out of this country, we allow them to go. Because some of them, we give them our own Nigerian passport. They hand us our Nigerian passports too. Like those ones that are coming in as either refugee or migrants. For instance, the Nizamiya Hospital. These are migrants now in Nigeria. But they are our own property today. We give them...
Some have naturalized.
And then they naturalized. With the collaboration with the Nigerian Immigration Services, they were given Nigerian passport. They are holding Nigerian passport, so they can travel. And for any refugee that want to leave this country, we make sure that we prepare him to leave and go by issuing him a certificate, CTD. So I think the situation now is much, much better now. And I think I can say without missing word that most of the refugees in Nigeria are appreciating the Nigerian government for the step government is taking and for the protection and concern and assistance they are offering to them. I think they are very appreciative.
All right. At this point, we'll have to leave this conversation. We've spent the better part of an hour speaking on people of concern.
Yeah, peoples of concern.
Peoples of concern. And, it encompasses refugees, migrants and displaced persons.
Yeah.
And so Tijjani Aliyu Ahmed, Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and internally displaced persons, we'd like to thank you for coming on this program.
Thank you very much.
And we hope you'll come again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover. Bye for now.